All right, we're going back on the record. We're continuing the cross-examination of Mr. Lee. You may proceed.
Mr. Lee, let's go back. We were talking about Exhibit 35 and this last item of uncategorized $92,000 of payroll. I'm going to pull up what's been previously just introduced as Exhibit 39. Which represents to contain all the backup for these payments. And I will represent to you that I have looked through this entirety of this document and all the canceled checks included, and I can find no reference to any actual payments that correspond to payroll from 2017 to 2018 in the amount of $92,468.41.
Did you look at which bank statement did you look at? Because this came out from Highland Senior Living Arlington LLC. You just showed me the Four Corners bank statement.
No, sir. These are all, if we go through these are Four Corners, starts here at the beginning. And then if we go down about, these are Highland Senior Living Arlington's are here. And then if we go down to the bottom, it's, well, there's more Four Corners in there, but this is still Four Corners. But if we go down towards the bottom, then it switches to Highland Senior Village Living, Arlington, with credit card statements and checks. And then it switches to Highland Senior, it's still Arlington. And then it switches to Highland Senior Living at the end. But regardless, I've gone through and looked at every single check and all the bank statements, and I cannot find a corresponding payment that references an actual payment made pursuant to your Exhibit 35 and also unreferenced by a check number or a bank withdrawal.
The $92,468 for payroll, that's accumulative between 2017 and 2018. All the payroll that we have made under Highland Senior Living Arlington.
So that's just the totality of payroll that you're saying you incurred but don't have evidence of payment for today, correct?
It's in the bank. It's in the bank statements.
Can you identify which statement it would be in? Because if you're calculating from 2017 to 2018, it wouldn't be in one bank statement, would it?
No, it should be every month. So starting in 2017, you have to show me on your screen the Highland Senior Living Arlington LLC 2017 BB&T bank statement.
PDF, but let me find an Arlington bank statement for you. Here's some Arlington. So here's a bank statement. That's Senior Living. Senior Living. Senior Living. Senior Living. Here's an Arlington bank statement.
See payroll right there. June 6th.
And who are you paying?
Paying the staff that work on this project.
Okay, but those are people that are working for Highland Village Senior Living Arlington, correct?
No, it's in connection with the work that Four Corners were doing.
Okay, but these are for employees of Highland Senior Village Arlington, correct?
Incorrect. These are employees of Highland Senior Living Arlington.
That's what I said.
You say village, so I just want to.
Okay, this is payroll for a company called Highland Senior Living Village Arlington, not Four Corners Development, correct?
The name kept getting misused. It's Highland Senior Living Arlington LLC, no village.
Okay, I'm
So,
sorry.
yeah.
Let me just, let me do it this way. I'm gonna call the owner entity Senior Living. I'm gonna call the Arlington entity Senior Arlington. How about that?
Okay.
Okay, so the payroll on Exhibit 35, right here from 2017 to 2018, was payroll paid to employees of Highland Senior Living Arlington LLC, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and all of these costs that you have listed on page 4, 5, and 6, totaling $205,000, are for costs incurred by Highland Senior Living Arlington LLC, correct?
Correct.
And then I want to go back to page 1. There was something that I missed of page 35. So in addition to the $75,000 of management fees paid to Highland Senior Living Arlington LLC, we also have a payment of $50,266.64 paid to the owner entity, Highland Village Senior Living. Do you see that?
Yes.
So you are paying Allsol's upstream owner party $50,000 and charging that back to Allsol for your work as Four Corners, correct?
I don't understand that question. Can you repeat it?
Sure. Four Corners wrote a check for in excess of $50,000 for management fees to the entity in which Allsol was contracted with to build this project, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and you are seeking to charge your payment to Allsol's owner party against Allsol for Four Corners work it was supposed to be doing for Allsol, correct?
Objection compound, Your Honor. I'm not entirely sure what the question is he's asking.
I don't think it's compound, but does the witness understand it?
Yes, and I have previously stated in my deposition regarding this specific question, why there's a $50,000 charge to payment to Highlands Village Senior Living. And as previously stated, Highlands Village Senior Living was paying Raj Panta, the project manager of that work on this furnishing project, back in 2016, before Four Corners were formed. So these are just, back payment back to Highlands Village for all the salary that we paid Raj back in 2016.
And Raj is the Highland Village Senior Living owner representative for construction, as identified in the pleading we saw, correct?
Owner representative. I guess that's an accurate description. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got, I just want to add it up to make sure that, and so your contention is that this 50,000 is in addition to these other payments for Thala Raja Panta?
Correct. So that 50,000 is for the previous year, 2016.
Oh, for the previous year, 2016, before Four Corners ever was in existence?
Before Four Corners, the entity was established, and like I said before the project even broke ground, we were already doing work for Four Corners.
Oh, okay.
And Russ was already involved.
Understand. Well, let's talk about something else. You mentioned that your testimony, we talked about your testimony. Well, let me ask this question real quick. We went through 2 unconditional lien waivers that you contend were signed by Four Corners, correct? And let's just go look at those. Those are plaintiffs, I believe 6. This one. Have you seen this document before?
Yes, I have.
And
What
and
exhibit number is this?
this is plaintiff 6.
Okay.
And this is a document signed by whom?
Tien Koi.
Thien Koi.
Mhm.
And as what?
States title CEO.
Correct. And he signed this unconditional waiver on behalf of Four Corners, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And this is part of the payment that Four Corners is acknowledging that it got, in addition to the payments that Mr. Koei withheld from payments due to Allsol under the construction contract, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, mischaracterizes the witness's testimony. Mr. Colway is not the owner of the project. It's Highlands Village Senior Living LLC. That's been testified to many times.
Let me rephrase the question. Are you aware if Mr. Koei is a controlling interest figure of Highland Senior Living Village LLC?
He's one of the decision maker of HVSL, Highlands Village Senior Living.
He is one of the decision makers for the owner entity upon which this release is being submitted, correct?
No, I disagree. This document is for Four Corners Development, has nothing to do with owner entity.
Okay. Well, all I'm asking you is to confirm that Mr. Koei, who is a controlling member of the owner entity, signed this document as CEO on behalf of Four Corners, acknowledging $467,000 of payments made.
Objection, best evidence rule, Your Honor. This is, the document speaks for itself.
Overruled. You can answer.
Okay, so yeah, Mr. Quay, by signing this document, is acknowledging that he received a payment of $467,000 as represented on this exhibit.
Correct. And then plaintiff's exhibit 17 is another release, correct, Mr. Lee?
Correct.
And again, this is on behalf of Four Corners Development, correct?
Correct.
And Mr. Koei represents himself as what on this document?
He has to be owner.
Okay. And this is an additional $31,500 acknowledgement of payment, correct?
Correct.
Are you aware, and there are 2 other releases signed by 2 other individuals of the same name, of the same amounts, correct?
I don't understand the question.
Sure, let's go to plaintiffs. I'm sorry, let me stop screen and find it so I don't. Oh, it's a defendant exhibit. I apologize. Hold on, I'm having technical difficulties again. Why isn't this? Okay, well, I'll get back to that in a second.
Why don't we, I need to take a very quick break anyway, so why don't you deal with your technical difficulty and I'll be right back.
I need to restart my computer, Your Honor, because it's all locked up. So
Go ahead and restart it.
Okay, I'll be back.
Should we stay on the link, Your Honor?
You can.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, guys, Mr. Gasworth, is your computer working?
Yes, sir. I'm all back up and running, sir.
Great. Sorry about that. We're having some issues here. So let's go ahead and proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Lee, we were talking about the waivers and release that were signed by Mr. Coe, and I apologize if I'm not getting the name correctly. Is it Coy or Coke? Can someone help me, please, again?
It's koi, like koi,
Koi.
like a
Okay.
koi pond.
Mr. Coy, we were talking about the two unconditional releases signed by Mr. Coy previously. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And then you had occasion to send different releases to Allsol, did you not?
I've sent releases to Also Construction, yes.
Okay, well, we just saw the ones that were executed by Mr. Coy, correct?
Yes.
And I'd like to show you what has been previously marked as Defendant's Exhibit 29 and ask if you recognize this document.
Is this defendant 29?
Yes, sir.
Are you referring to this email?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yes, this email, yes.
Yeah. Did you send this email, sir?
Yes,
And did you send this email with the attachment on page 2?
I believe so, yes.
And did you send it as the signed unconditional waiver and release of progress payment for the 2 checks to Four Corners Development?
I believe so, yes.
Move to admit 29, Your Honor.
29 is already admitted.
Sorry.
No objection, in case you need that on the record.
Okay.
And if we go to page 2, we're going to see the same release that we saw before. Are we not, Mr. Lee?
Yes,
For the same amount of money, the $467,000, correct?
correct.
Except this release is being signed by somebody else, correct?
Correct.
Who is it being signed by?
Eric Tan,
Eric Tan, and that's the same gentleman who is also connected with Highland Senior Living Village, Arlington.
Highland Senior Living Arlington LLC, correct.
So he's signing this on behalf of Four Corners,
Correct.
and you're sending this to also.
I did send this to Also, correct.
With what intention did you send it to also?
To show that Also sent us those 2 checks totaling $467,000.
Okay, and why did you feel the need to send it from Mr. Tan, who is apparently connected with Highland Senior Living Arlington? Why did you have him sign this instead of the one that had been previously signed by Mr. Coy?
I don't remember the reasoning behind it. This was, back in 2017. But they appear to be for the same checks 8633 and 8634.
That's correct. It is for the exact same release that was previously signed by Mr. Coy, but now subsequently signed by Mr. Tan. What was Mr. Tan's position with Four Corners Development?
It's the manager.
So was he also the manager of Highland Senior Living Village, Arlington? Highland Senior Living Arlington?
He's one of the partners of Highland Senior Living Arlington LLC.
Okay, is he also a partner of the owner entity, Highland Village Senior Living LLC?
No,
Okay, so he's only connected, according to your testimony, with as a manager of Four Corners Development and a manager of Highlands Arlington.
I did not say he was a manager of Highland Senior Living Arlington LLC. I said he was one of the partner of Highland Senior Living Arlington LLC.
Who are the other partners of Highland Senior Living Arlington LLC?
Highland
Objection,
Senior,
Your Honor, objection relevance. I'm not entirely sure the owners of another entity unrelated to this dispute is an issue.
What's the relevance?
It's whether or not they had the authority to act in the manner in which they were acting on these documents.
But the other people involved in that entity aren't involved. that doesn't go to the issue for it's only for this person, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so I'll sustain that objection.
Okay. Mr. Lee, other than the 2 releases that were signed, were there any other releases that Four Corners executed other than the 2 we've talked about here today?
I'm assuming you're referring to the release pertaining to 467,000, and then the other release signed in 2018, I believe, for 31,500. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Those are the only 2 releases that I'm aware of.
And you don't recall any other releases, correct?
No, I don't recall.
Okay. I'd like to show you what is marked as COI 000958. This is another release that was executed by Four Corners in March of 2018 for $166,500, of which you are the notary. Do you see that, sir?
Correct.
Okay. Have you taken it into account, this release, in your computation of damages, sir?
Have I taken account into this release?
Do you mean the figures in this release, or do you mean the release itself?
The numbers in this release. This is a release for 100. We previously looked at 2 releases that totaled $498,500, around that amount. Correct, sir?
Correct.
And then this is a 3rd release for an additional $166,500. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Who signed this release?
Eric Tan.
So I just want to go back and confirm with the other release. So Mr. Tan signs this release in February of 2017. And then Mr. Mr. Tan signs this release for an additional $166,500, correct?
Correct.
And you notarize this, correct?
Correct.
Your Honor, I move that this be admitted. What exhibit number is this?
It's not previously marked.
Does it have an exhibit number?
It does not right now.
It has, I think this is the same as a plaintiff's exhibit, Your Honor, and I don't have an objection to its admission. So if we want to add a different number, that's fine. But I'm pretty sure it's already pre-admitted as a plaintiff's exhibit.
I didn't see it.
You offered defendant's exhibit 1 through 127. So do you want to just make this 128?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you're gonna need to attach a exhibit sticker and email that to the court coordinator.
Yeah, no objection, Your Honor, just for the record.
Defendant 128 is admitted.
So, sir, what was the purpose of the execution of this?
Right. So Assault Construction did not write a check to Four Corners for this amount. Assault authorized the owner of the building to withhold this amount to pay for the furnishing items, because at that time, Four Corners, were relying on HVSL, Highlands Village Senior Living, the owner of the building, to keep paying for all these miscellaneous furnishing items. And in this claim, I'm giving Assault credit for this amount.
Okay, so let's break that down and go back to make sure that I understand. Your testimony was just that this was to record the owner of the project, which is Highland Village Senior Living, which is Allsol's upstream contracting party, correct?
Sorry, repeat the question.
Okay, Allsol was contracted with Highland Village Senior Living to build the building, correct?
Correct.
And you just testified that that entity, Highland Village Senior Living, this document was to document that entity's withholding of monies that would be otherwise due to Allsol for Four Corners, correct?
Can you rephrase that question one more time?
Sure. You just testified that you were relying on Highland Village Senior Living to pay for the miscellaneous furnishing items, correct?
Correct.
That was the party to whom Allsol was contracted with to build this facility, correct?
Correct.
So in lieu of an actual payment from Allsol to Four Corners, it's your testimony that this document, this release, was to record the owner's withholding of monies that would have been paid to Allsol and then paid to Four Corners. Is that accurate?
But also told the owner to withhold it to pay, for Four Corners furnishings items.
And did Four Corners get paid by the owner for that?
No, the owner just went ahead and paid for all the items needed to, all the furnishing items that's in connection with this project.
Oh, so the owner did that and not Four Corners.
No, because again, in 2018, since 2018, Four Corners has been relying on the owner to pay for all these expenses because Alarm has really stopped paying Four Corners.
Well, wait a minute. The owner was, you've admitted in your pleading. Well, let's do this. Let's look at your deposition and what you said last Wednesday. Do you recall what you testified last Wednesday regarding the owner's withholding of payments and how much money was owed to you?
Can you show me specifically which
Sure.
question that was?
Do you recall testimony last week that said that Allsol owed you over $1 million?
Also owes Four Corners Development $1 million. Yes, $1 million because our contractor agreement is $1.496 million.
Okay, so here I asked you, but you understand, did you hear the opening statements in this case?
I did.
Okay, did you read your pleading of what you're seeking in this lawsuit?
I did.
And in that pleading, does it acknowledge that the owner withheld $500,000 from sums due to Allsol on behalf of Four Corners?
And you're referring to my attorney's pleading today?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Do you disagree with that?
I don't disagree with Mr. Martinez pleading. No.
Well, let's make sure that we have the facts straight. In your pleading, you state, in accordance with the verbal and written agreement, defendant made payments directly to plaintiff in 2017 and 2018 totaling $498,550.50. We've established that those were paid by actual checks from Allsol to Four Corners, correct?
Correct.
Then it goes on to say, subsequent to those payments, defendant Alam requested the owner of the project. Who is the owner of the project?
Highlands Village Senior Living, LLC.
Okay. In this pleading, it says the owner of the project, Theon Coy. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Because Mr. Coy is the primary decision maker of Highlands Senior Living, correct?
He is a decision maker, correct?
Okay. And it goes on to say that the owner of the project, Mr. Coy, deduct payments from future construction draws to reimburse plaintiff for its work. Do you see that?
Correct.
Pursuant to that request, the owner deducted $552,289.90 to pay plaintiff.
Okay.
But according to your testimony, you weren't paid that amount. The owner paid those amounts directly to order those materials, correct?
Repeat the question.
Sure. You testified, and we can go back to Exhibit 35 right here, that these were the costs incurred by Four Corners Development that we've gone through that included a bunch of stuff that we'll go over briefly again in a minute. And that on page 2, these items on page 2 and 3 were costs incurred by Highlands Village Senior Living, the owner, Mr. Coy, correct?
Mr. Coy is not the owner of Highlands Village Senior Living.
Okay, I'm sorry, the decision maker.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
These were the costs incurred by them. So if we go back to your pleading, I just want to understand, do you or do you not acknowledge that Highland Village Senior Living withheld $552,000 from Allsol under its construction contract to allegedly compensate Four Corners Development?
Right. I agree. The owner withheld $52,000 to pay for all his furnishing items. Correct.
Okay, and in this pleading, the owner of the project is represented in writing as Mr. Coy, correct?
Again, my testimony remains Highlands Village Senior Living is the owner of the project.
Okay. I'm just asking what this pleading says of your company that you're here testifying on behalf of.
Objection asked and answered, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Well, let's go back to your deposition testimony. So I asked you at your deposition, what amount of money are you contending as damages in this lawsuit against Allsol and Mr. Along? Okay, and you said, what? And I said, what number is that? He says, he owes me at least $1 million. Do you see that?
Correct.
And I said, at least $1 million? And you say, to Four Corners Development. You remember that?
Correct. Yes.
And then I went on to ask you later on about the owner's withholding of monies under that agreement. Do you recall that testimony?
You have to show me.
Sure. It's right here. I'm sorry. I must have missed it. Hold on. $67. Oh.
Your Honor, I don't know. I guess I want to object to this line of questioning. I feel like a lot of this is cumulative of what we've already gone over. And I mean, we're willing to stipulate what we're asking for in trial. It was in the opening statement.
No, Your Honor, this goes to the credibility of the witness in that he testified as to the lack of the agreement that was pled in its own petition. And I would just like to find that.
I'll be honest, I'm not fully following this part of the testimony, what you're trying to do here. So,
Okay, well, I'll move on. We went over now who did what, and that Highland Village Senior Living ordered the materials on Exhibit 35. But in your testimony, you said right here, what I asked, what is the total value of the services you provided? And you answered, the total value, well, we still haven't been able to complete everything that we wanted to do because Allsol has stopped paying us since 2018. And then I went on. Is that correct? Did I read that correctly?
You read that correctly.
Okay, so you did not complete, you did not get to complete all the items as you previously testified to, correct?
As I testified today, it's still ongoing, correct?
Correct. And then I asked you, did you receive, and you meaning Four Corners Development, any funds from Mr. Coy outside of Allsol Construction? Do you see that?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. I objected to form, and the basis of my objection today is that this question was vague and ambiguous in asking if Mr. Coy had made any payments outside to Four Corners. And it was unclear from the question if he was referring to Mr. Coy as the owner of the project or if he was referring to HVSL as the owner. And I have the objection there. And in fact, I'm going to object to any reference to any answers to questions to which I made an objection, a formal objection to the deposition, Your Honor. If he wants to ask the—
I'm not going to let you make a running objection on that, but I will let you make this particular objection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So
Can I get a ruling, Your Honor?
Sustain.
Thank you.
okay. So again, based on your testimony here regarding the work that you did not complete for the items under the contract, and those were those items we went over at the beginning, and that you stated it's still ongoing, correct?
The work is still ongoing, correct?
Okay. You don't have any estimates here today as to the value of remaining work to be performed, do you?
Sorry, rephrase the question.
Okay, you're an accountant, correct?
I'm not an accountant, no.
Are you an estimator? Construction estimator?
I'm not.
Okay, are you qualified to provide opinions of estimates of remaining work to be performed?
I don't understand your question.
Okay, sure. You say there's ongoing work and work yet left to complete for Four Corners work for Allsol under its contract, correct?
Correct.
And that you did not fully complete the work because you say you were not paid, correct?
I was not. Four Corners was not fully paid.
Okay, but Four Corners did not fully complete the work under the contract because you've testified that you have ongoing work to perform and work left to complete, correct?
Your Honor, I'm going to object on the basis this entire line of questioning violates the court's ruling just today about conditions precedent and failure of consideration. None of these claims about whether or not work was performed were ever raised in any pleading in which Mr. Gasworth or anybody on his side has submitted in this case. And I understand what Mr. Gasworth's trying to do. He's trying to backdoor his way into an affirmative defense. And I have to preserve the record, Your Honor, object on this basis because they did not plead this and we're not waiving or trying this by consent.
Your Honor, briefly in response, the burden of proof is on the plaintiff in any case brought before the court. The plaintiff pled full performance. The facts have been established that there was not full performance. Therefore, the plaintiff, as a matter of law, is not entitled to the balance of its contract, and its claim then reverts to either quantum merit if they cannot show full performance. They cannot show full performance by the plain testimony before this court, and as such, they're not entitled to the relief that they sought.
Your Honor, may I respond?
It's a burden of proof argument.
May I respond, Your Honor?
May.
The burden of proof is going to be established by the four corners of the documents which forms the agreement between the parties. Nothing in that agreement speaks to this idea of having to provide and move every single piece of furniture into this project in order to have accomplished full performance. We have pled full performance in connection with this pleadings, and we have fully performed as evidenced by all of the documents that have been seen already by this court. And the four corners of the document itself will dictate what performance was required, if any, to be paid in connection with this project. And we would ask the court to look at that record.
All right, I'm going to overrule the objection.
Mr. Lee?
Sorry, please repeat the question.
Sure. You are not qualified as a construction estimator to provide any testimony here today on the remaining work that's left to be performed by Four Corners for the Highland Senior Living Village project, correct?
Objection relevance, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Mr. Lee. What work is ongoing today?
Right. So, for instance, in the laundry room, we're only able to purchase, I believe, 2 or 3 sets of washers and dryers. When we started the business, when the building was finally able to open, those were sufficient. But as we are moving in more residents now, we need to, buy more appliances to serve the residents. Same thing with like the computer equipments. As we are growing, as the business is growing, I had to add more and more equipments.
We go back, sir, to Exhibit 35, which is your cost incurred under the contract. And I touched on this during our deposition, but the total value of services that you contend were performed by Four Corners directly and costs incurred by Four Corners directly is $390,000 and $809.42, correct?
Correct.
And of that amount, we have $75,000 of management fees paid to Highland Senior Living Arlington and $50,000 of management fees paid to Highland Village Senior Living, correct?
Correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. Can I share the screen?
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Lee, I want to show you what has been marked as PX 19, Plaintiff's Exhibit 19. You're familiar with this document, correct?
Correct.
This is that March 19th, 2018 agreement between Allsall Construction and Four Corners Development LLC. Is that right?
That's correct.
Now, in this document, do you understand this to be part of the agreement that you had with Allsall Construction for providing the services that Four Corners provided in connection with this project?
Correct.
Where in this document does it indicate what Four Corners is going to do on this project?
On the first paragraph, it says, provides alarm of Allsall Construction Inc. promise to pay a guaranteed sum of $1.3 million up to $1.563 million to Four Corners Development LLC for consultation, work, good, and services provided in relation to Highlands Village Senior Living being constructed at 120 Regency Parkway, Mansfield, Texas.
And is it your understanding that Four Corners Development LLC did in fact provide, let's start with consultation services on this project?
Yes, Four Corners did provide consultation.
Did Four Corners Development LLC provide work on this project?
Yes.
Did Four Corners Development LLC provide goods on this project?
Yes.
Did Four Corners Development LLC provide services on this project?
Yes.
Does it say that you have to provide every single bit of consultation for this project in order to receive your payment?
No.
Does it say that you have to complete 100% of your work to receive payment on this project?
No.
Does it say that you have to provide 100% of the goods to receive payment on this project?
No.
Does it say that you have to provide 100% of the services to receive payment on this project?
No.
The last paragraph of this agreement states that for any amount that is less than the USD $1,496,000, also will need to provide substantiated evidence as to justify the payment shortfall. Do you see that?
Yes.
And you testified that today that you have not received the full $1,496,000. Do you remember that testimony?
That's correct.
At any point, did Allsall give you any substantiated evidence relating to its reasons for not paying you $1,496,000?
No.
Did Allsall ever at any point, even up to today, say that the reason they didn't pay you is because you didn't complete the work on this project?
No.
In June and in subsequent emails to this, do you remember receiving an email or being party to an email that Mr. Alam had sent after March of 2018 relating to the furnishings?
I've seen an email while preparing for this case. Yes, that Asal sent someone.
Can you go back to that document?
Yes, Your Honor.
So it says here, the full balance will be paid from Allsol to Four Corners within 14 days when the funding bank BBT releases the final retainage related to the construction of Highlands. Has that occurred?
No.
Mr. Lee, has the final retainage been
Oh.
paid?
Well, yes, the bank released the final retainage, but Asal never paid us the full balance. That's why.
Okay.
And to be clear, Mr. Lee, when you testified during your deposition that you believe the damages were $1 million, how does that reconcile with what we're saying today about payments being held from the owner? Can you explain to the judge why you said $1 million in your deposition, but now we're saying it's 445?
Yes, because when that question was first asked, I believe it was one of the first questions. The question was, what is Four Corners seeking? So I will answer it. Four Corners was paid $498,000. So the difference between the agreed value and what Asal has paid is about $1 million. That was what I was trying to. That's why I explained.
So what you're actually asking for the court, can you explain what you're asking the court to give you today in terms of the damages you're seeking?
Right. So factoring the Highlands Village Senior Living, the amount that it held back, which is about $552,000. Today, I'm asking the court to rule on or to reward $445,000 to Four Corners plus attorney's fees, which is about $40,000.
Now, Mr. Gasworth had asked you or repeated a question during his deposition about what the value was of the work that you performed. What do you understand the value of the work is that you performed?
Yes, it's the contracted amount is $1.496 million.
And you're just asking the court to award that difference, correct?
That's correct.
Up to today, did Mr. Mr. Alam or anybody at Allsol ask you for backup documentation for any of the expenses incurred by Four Corners on this project?
Nope.
In fact, you did see some lien releases during Mr. Gasworth's testimony, Gasworth's direct or cross-examination, and he did ask you about some lien releases. Did you, in fact, receive payment from Allsol Construction, at least partial payment?
The $467,000 and then plus another $31,500. Those are it.
And in terms of that payment, at the time the payment was made, were you required by Allsol Construction to provide backup for the expenses that you incurred?
No.
Were you required to say that you fully performed on any of the work in accordance with the agreement in order to receive your money?
No.
I want to show you really quickly PX 32, which we covered a little bit in your direct examination. This is a record of the payments that were made. Do you remember this, seeing this document?
I've seen this document.
What is the date of this email?
March 21st, 2019.
And do you see where it says new payment, $250,000 agreed? Do you see that?
Yes.
When Mr. Alam promised to pay this $250,000 on March 21st, 2019, do you remember if he asked Four Corners to prove that it had done any work on this project?
No.
Did Mr. Alam ask anybody at Four Corners, to your knowledge, to provide any sort of receipts or invoices in order to justify the payment he was making in 2019?
No.
Finally, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. Mr. Lee, you were asked some questions about Mr. Coy and his role in signing some of these lien waivers. You yourself testified that you're chief financial officer of not just this company, but other companies as well. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you understand that Mr. Coy represents many companies as well. Is that your understanding?
That's correct.
And what do you base that understanding on?
Because Mr. Coy is a partner partner in many different entities.
Many of those entities in which you're a partner, correct?
Correct.
Is it illegal to your knowledge to have an interest in multiple companies?
Objection. Witness is not qualified to respond.
And
Mr. Lee, the fact that you have interest in many companies, do you find that problematic?
Objection. Relevance. Whether the witness finds something problematic that he's involved in.
sustained.
Mr. Lee, when Mr. Coy signed those lien waivers, did he have authority to act on behalf of Four Corners?
Yes.
And when Mr. Tan signed those lien waivers, did he have authority to act on behalf of Four Corners?
Yes.
Is there, in terms of you actually notarized some of those lien waivers, correct?
Correct.
And you, in fact, notarized the agreement, the March 19th agreement between Alam or Allsol and Four Corners, correct?
Correct.
And you were present during the conversation that led to the execution of that agreement.
Correct.
What was what do you remember Mr. Alam saying during that conversation?
Objection. Calls for hearsay.
This would be an exception to hearsay, Your Honor. It's a party admission.
Objections overruled.
Go ahead, Mr. Lee.
Right. So the purpose of that March 2018 meeting was to memorialize the agreement between Four Corners and Allsol Construction. And on top of that, I remember there was discussion of Allsol talking about, Mr. Alam talking about value engineering on the construction side, which would, which we could be allocated to the Four Corners budget. And that's why there's a range. There's a 1.3 to 1.563. And Mr. Alam signed the agreement.
All right. I'm no questions, no further questions, Your Honor, for this witness.
Quick redirect, Your Honor.
Okay.
Going back to this agreement, Mr. Lee, it says, I, Parwise Alam of Allsol Construction, correct?
Correct.
So you understood that Mr. Alam was acting on behalf of Allsol Construction in this agreement, correct?
Objection, speculation, Your Honor.
I'm asking for the witnesses.
Overruled. If you know, don't speculate. But if you know, you can answer. If you don't know, don't speculate.
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, Your Honor.
Okay. Well, this agreement promises to pay a sum to you, Four Corners, in exchange for something, correct?
Correct.
Now, normally in business, do you get paid before you provide services in your experience?
Yes.
Oh, you get prepaid. That's how it works?
Yes.
Okay, so people write you checks to provide stuff in the future and don't actually have to get the actual things in response?
Yeah, so in one of the companies that I'm involved in, All-Star Healthcare, we're a Medicare contractor. Medicare pays us before we, provide services to take care of a client. So yes.
Okay, but this agreement was to pay Four Corners for its consultation, work, goods, and services provided in relation to the project, correct?
Correct.
And if we go back to Exhibit 35, those services are limited to the ones on page 1, because those are the only ones that Four Corners provided. Isn't that correct?
Incorrect.
Okay, well, the services on page 2 through 6, which I might add includes the bus and payments back to Four Corners, are costs incurred by the owner, Highland Village Senior Living, correct?
These are the costs was expense from Highlands Village Senior Living, correct?
Correct. And then on the last page, these are the costs incurred by another entity, Highland Senior Living Arlington, correct?
Correct.
And this again also includes payments to the owner's project manager, Thala Raj Panta, correct?
The owner's manager? Which owner's manager?
Thala Raj Panta, the owner's construction manager.
You've already
Raj
covered
Panta-
that.
Yeah, I've already covered it. I don't need to cover it again.
Yeah.
Okay. No further questions.
We don't have any further use for this witness, Your Honor.
All right, this witness is excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Why don't we do this? Let's take a quick break. Do you still think you're going to finish today? How many more witnesses do we have?
Well, I might be able to cut it short, Your Honor. I might just have one more witness.
Mr.
I don't know how
Gassworth,
many witnesses Mr. Gassworth has.
I mean, it's okay if you want to come back tomorrow. I'm just trying to get a feel for everything.
I can only speak for myself, Your Honor. We will likely have one more witness, maybe two. And then I guess I would say attorney's fees, but I'm not sure how you want to handle that. If you want us to just proffer our fees,
Or
if you want to
I'm
question and answer.
flexible.
Yeah,
I don't mind doing attorney's fees afterwards or however you guys want to do it or during that. It's up to y'all.
Yeah, Brad, I'm fine with bifurcating the attorney's fees if you are. I don't want
I'm
to
fine.
put you in the spot.
Okay, we'll take a 10-minute break.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, everyone, are you all there?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Go ahead and call your next witness.
The plaintiff calls Mr. Parway's Alam.
Okay. Sir, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Alam. How are you this day?
Very good, sir. How about you?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you for making yourself available for trial. I know this is unusual circumstances for having a trial, but I appreciate you being there and available for us today. Now, you understand that I'm the attorney for the plaintiff Four Corners Development LLC in this matter, correct?
That's right, sir.
And you understand that your company, Allsall Construction, has been named as a defendant in this lawsuit, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you also understand that you yourself have been named as a defendant in this lawsuit.
Yes, sir.
You're joined here today by counsel, Mr. Brad Gasworth. Is that correct?
That's right, sir.
I want to just quickly cover for the court or help the court understand why we're here today. Your company was the general contractor on the project called Highlands Village Senior Living at Mansfield. Is that correct?
That's right, sir.
And part of that project was to construct an assisted living facility there in Mansfield, Texas?
That's right, sir.
And the owner of that project was a company called Highlands Village Senior Living LLC. Is that correct?
That's right, sir.
And in terms of the general contractor's responsibilities, I'm sure there are a lot of responsibilities that a general contractor would have on a project like this, but one of those responsibilities was for hiring and engaging subcontractors on this project. Is that right?
That's right, sir.
Now, this project, your company had previously, this wasn't the first senior living center that your company had constructed. Is that right?
That's right.
In fact, you had a project called Roseland that you had constructed before, right?
That's right.
And so this would be this, I'm sorry, go ahead, say that again.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh,
Go ahead.
no problem. We might interrupt each other sometimes, so let's make sure we're respectful of the court reporter today. In terms of the senior living facility, I know that you said you've had experience constructing senior centers. Do those require special furnishings for an assisted living facility?
The special furnishing items on this project was defined by the owner, which Mr. Tian Koi approached me on behalf of the Four Corner Construction. And that was, a letter came from Raj Panta on, that was date was copied to Mr. Tian Koi. The date is here, May 2nd, 2016, stated that these are some furnishing items I want you to include in your total bid amount. And that's what email went from him to Tian and myself. That was part of the proposal he sent me to add, and I added those amounts, which was $552,000, and send it to the bank. And yes, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and I'll object as non-responsive, but I just want to understand just generally speaking, a senior center or a senior living facility is going to require specialty furnishings. Is that a fair statement?
It's a fair statement, yes.
And in this project, you understood that that there was an agreement between Allsall and another entity, another company, Four Corners Development Limited Liability Company, to handle the furnishings and specialty items for this project.
That's right, sir.
And in fact, you had previously had received correspondence, emails from Four Corners, that entity, relating to this contract that Allsall had with Four Corners. Is that correct?
The document came from the Highland Heights, Mansfield. The document which I received on May 2nd, 2016, for adding the the schedule of values for furnishing item came from Highland Heights, Mansfield. That was the name listed on the email.
But in terms of documents, you did receive documents from Four Corners Development on this, in this case, correct?
This document is the only one I have it from this Highland Heights, Mansfield.
Okay, can you explain to the court what your role is at Allsol Construction? What are you? What's your title?
I'm the president of the company.
The president of the
I'm
company.
the owner. That's right. I'm the owner of the company. Yes.
And my understanding, is it correct that you have employees that are below you?
Yes.
And one of those employees is an employee named Saddam Rasul Husani Syed?
That's right. Yes, sir.
And I'll spell that for the court reporter: Saddam Rasool Husani Hussaini Syed Syed. Did I spell that correctly?
That's right.
Now, I'm going to direct your attention to an exhibit that's been pre-admitted. This is plaintiff's exhibit number 4. And so it's known as PX4. Do you remember seeing this document before, Mr. Alam?
Yes, sir.
And this is actually a document that was sent to one of your employees at Allsol Construction on January 9th, 2017, correct?
That's right.
Now, this project first broke ground in or around October of 2016. Is that right?
That's right.
And so this would have been very early on in the project when you received this email, or when Allsol received this email, correct?
That's right.
And what is the subject line, if you could read that for the court?
It's a third-party contract info.
And what is the information that's being provided in this email?
Four Corners Development LLC, EIN 813569836, address 1100 West Pioneer Parkway, Arlington, Texas 76013.
And EIN information is information that you would need from all your subcontractors, correct?
That's right.
And it's because you need to make payment to the subcontractors and then record that payment to the IRS, correct?
That's right.
So as early as 2017, you were asking for, Allsol Construction was asking Four Corners to provide the EIN information for their company, correct?
Yeah. And the reason is, do you want to know the reason?
I think you already said it was because of the IRS, right? Because you need to make payments and you need to report that. Is that not correct?
Not correct. That way.
Okay.
That part is correct, but there is addition part of that one too. That on October, if I'm not mistaken, 11, a contract was drafted and legally entered in AIA contract, was under the Four Corner Construction and Allsol Construction as a subcontractor. And that document was given to the Tian. At that time, EIN number, he was not remembered. He came to the office, he grabbed the contract, and that contract will have a schedule of values for the work Four Corner is going to be provided on this project, which add to $1.3 million. And that contract, as Saddam requested that you took the contract, but we don't have your EIN number, and the project is already 2 months in the construction. I need for our accounting, because in the second draw of the pay application, they have took the advance payment of $498,000 plus 10%. That was the amount was drawn to pay the vendor he was asking for. And that was time we didn't have the EIN number. In order to release any fund, we have to have EIN number. And that was the EIN number was sent to us. On October 15, October 12th, the actual contract was signed after he took the contract, which sent it to the bank, which says 6.8 million, include $1.3 million. But those numbers were budget number from the Four Corner Construction under the AIA contract. And as you know, like every general contractor who's been in business, whenever you have a subcontractor agreement between the general contractor and the subcontractor always obtain the pricing, because this project was, as soon as the project submit to the city for permit, the subcontractor collect all the vendors' pricing and everything, and then they distribute the schedule of value, what the amount they drawn. But they put the amount 1.3 million, but they don't have any justification. And it was ready. You can do that because as the job moves, you can collect. And as you justify those line items that you got paid, because project is started in October, and the exhibit you're referring like March 19.
Mr. Alam, and I apologize for interrupting. I think we have limited time. I want to make sure I get to my questions, and I appreciate you answering the questions, but I want you to answer the questions directly, the ones that I'm asking. And so I asked you about the EIN, and what I heard, just answer this question, is that you asked for the EIN so that you could make payment to Four Corners. Is that yes or no?
You cannot release the payment till you have EIN number.
Okay, so it is yes, you needed the EIN number.
The EIN number March, that's right. That's what in order to release any money, you have to have EIN number.
Got it, thank you. And so I want to talk about another exhibit now, because early on, so you had stated, so this was 2017 when you asked for this EIN from Four Corners, and Four Corners provided it. And we'll get to your what you just testified to about a $1.3 million contract. We'll talk about that in a second. But I want to talk about just how this relationship transpired in terms of what documents were exchanged between the two entities. And so
but let me clarify one thing for you before we proceed.
Okay, sir, you can't just, it's a question and answer format. You need to just answer his questions, okay?
Okay.
Your attorney wants to clarify something, he can. But let me ask a question, because I want to make sure I kind of understand everything that's going on, because this is kind of an unusual setup here. So BBT was the bank. They released all the funds to Allsol. Where did they release the funds to?
They released to the owner.
To the owner?
Yes.
Okay. Not to Allsol?
No, sir.
Okay, that's a little confusing. All right, go ahead.
thank you, Your Honor. I want to show you what has been previously marked as PX20. This has been pre-admitted. Let me pull it up. Mr. Alam, can you see that document in front of you?
Yes.
Now, this is a W-9 form that was sent by Mr. Coy over at Four Corners Development that was sent to Allsol Construction. Is that correct?
That's right, sir.
And again, this was a document that you needed in order to make payments to Four Corners Development, correct?
That's right.
You agree that you did make payments to Four Corners Development in accordance with the agreement between Allsol Construction and Four Corners Development, don't you?
According to the schedule of values they have provided under the line item number 55 through 77.
So the line items 55 through 77, those are line items in the payment of values or the schedule of values between the owner entity, which is Highlands Village Senior Living LLC, and your company, Allsol Construction, correct?
No, sir. That is the contract which owner has taken, not signed, which was on October 11th, contract between Allsol Construction and the Four Corner LLC, because that amount came from Four Corner LLC into the schedule of values.
Okay, so I want to object as non-responsive. So what I'm asking for, so you're saying the schedule of values that you're referring to, and I think you talked about this during your deposition, that is on a document that is not signed by Four Corners Development, correct?
So how the bank released the fund to them?
So my question is, was it signed by Four Corners Development or not?
They signed the lien waivers. And they draw under the schedule of values those amounts.
Mr. Alam, again, my question is the document to which you're referring, which you have not produced in this lawsuit, which you said, you agree this is the document you're referring to, the one that you found, and I'm using that loosely, the night before the deposition that we took last week. You claimed that you found a document in which Four Corners was supposed to provide backup and invoices in order to be paid. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes, because.
And you remember in that testimony, I asked you whether or not it had in fact been signed by Four Corners, and you said it had not been signed. Is that correct?
I say it not, the one we have it not been signed, but there should be a copy with him that he signed it.
Mr. Alam, so my testimony is, or your testimony today is that you have no signed copy of any agreement with Four Corners that says that they have to provide receipts or backup documentation in order to be paid, correct?
So where the scheduler value came from?
Mr. Alam, that wasn't my question.
No, sir, where I created, where the scheduler values came from?
Mr. Alam.
If that's a true statement, I agree with you. But where those $1.3 million came in this picture?
So you agree with my statement that you do not have a signed version of that agreement to which you are now referring, correct?
They signed the pay application. The owner signed the pay application.
Mr. Alam, I'm asking about Four Corners' signature.
That's right, because Tian was the one who approving the pay application, and he's the one who brings the Four Corner contract. He's the one who took the contract to the bank, and the bank was funding it to him directly. Because normal procedure of the project, when you sign AIA contract, which is committed to the bank, there was nowhere in the contract says the owner is entitled to take the direct fund from the bank. The standard agreements are always when the pay application are approved, the contractor get the fund and he disburses based on the subcontract he signed. There was nowhere you can show me on AIA contract which was signed on October 12th. It says that owner can hold the progress payment.
Your Honor, I'm going to have to object to this line of testimony from Mr. Alam. Again, this is covered in our motion to exclude at the beginning of this, and I know it's not a jury, so I guess I'm not running the risk of poisoning the well, but I need to object to this in order to preserve the record. He cannot come in here and say there's a separate agreement between the owner or between Four Corners and Allsall Construction relating to this related to this project that he hasn't produced and that he admits himself was not signed by Four Corners. That's objection, the first objection. The second part of my objection, Your Honor, is again, he's continuing to push this line that Mr. Gasworth tried to push at the last hearing about Four Corners and Mr. Coy and the owner all being one entity, which again violates your ruling today about excluding that evidence. So I'm asking the court to sustain those.
Sir, just answer the questions that are asked. You keep throwing stuff in because I think you want to argue with the attorney. Answer the questions. Your attorney will have an opportunity to ask questions. I'll sustain the objection.
Your Honor, may I ask for a brief recess so I can just confer with my client real quick?
Sure, I'll just send you to the breakout room.
Thank you.
Just the two of you?
Yes, sir.
And what is his thing called? Firm? Okay.
Firm. You don't have to. I'll just run down there. I mean, it's okay.
Well, I opened it up.
Okay.
He'll need to join.
At the risk of insulting Your Honor, I just want to make sure you're okay. Are you okay, Your Honor? I'm worried about you.
Why?
You're drinking a lot of water. I just wasn't sure if you were.
No, I'm drinking Sprite.
Okay, got it. Just making sure. I wasn't sure if maybe we need to move this quicker for Your Honor's convenience.
No, I'm fine.
Okay, just making sure.
All right, you ready to proceed?
I am, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Alam, so I want to ask you in terms of the agreement between the parties. So we have seen this exhibit a few times, and so I'm going to share this screen, okay? You've seen PX19, correct?
That's right.
You have. And in terms of this document, you agree that this is a document dated March 19th, 2018, correct?
That's right.
And you agree that this is you, Parways Alam, over at Allsall Construction, Inc., and that is the correct address for the general contractor, correct?
That's right.
And it says that is your signature at the bottom of this, correct?
That's right.
And in fact, you signed it as Parways Alam, president of All Salt Construction Inc., correct?
That's right.
And in fact, it was notarized on March 19th, 2018, this exhibit PX19, or the attachment to the email that's PX19, it was notarized on March 19th, 2018. You agree with that?
That's right.
And you remember being present at a meeting in which you signed this document, correct?
That's right, sir.
And you remember Mr. Coy and Mr. Lee both being present at that meeting, correct?
That's right.
And in this document, you'll see that there is a statement made at the top. It says, I, Parways Alam of All Salt Construction Inc., promise to pay a guaranteed sum of USD $1,300,000 up to USD $1,563,000 to Four Corners Development LLC. Have I read that correctly so far?
That's right, sir.
And it says for consultation, work, good, and services provided in relation to Highlands Village Senior Living. Do you see that?
That's right.
And I've read that correctly.
Yes, sir.
And then it also says during every construction draw with funding bank, BB&T also will do its utmost to pay Four Corners a percentage of the sum of the money above. Do you see that?
That's right.
And then it also says that for any amount that is less than USD $1,496,000, also will need to provide substantiated evidence as to justify the payment shortfall, which needs to be agreed and accepted by Four Corners. Did I read that correctly?
That's right.
And your testimony today is not that this document is a made-up document, correct?
Objection. Is that a question?
Yes, it is.
Hello.
So you agree that this document is not fabricated in any way, correct?
This document was drafted by Mr. Coy or the Four Corner Construction.
And you signed this document, correct?
And the reason for the signature of this document.
That wasn't my question, Mr. Alam. Did you sign this document?
That's right, I did.
And your testimony today is that that's not, you're not saying to the court today that this is not your signature, correct?
No, I'm not. This is my signature, but this agreement was drafted by Four Corner Construction for my signature.
Now, you also testified and you remember taking a deposition in this action, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you testified during your deposition last week that you had, and again, a moment ago, you were talking about this. So I'm gonna ask a few questions about it. You said that there was a document which contained a furnishings budget to be prepared or offered by Four Corners Development. Do you remember that during your deposition?
Right. That's right.
And I'm more focused on the amount that you said that document was for. You said it was for $1.3 million. Do you remember that testimony?
That's right, sir.
And in fact, you remember during your deposition, I also offered a letter that you had, that your counsel had actually sent in this case. Do you remember that testimony?
Which letter is this?
There was a letter that was sent by Mr. Logan Adcock from Canterbury.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to show that to you.
Your Honor, I'm going to object.
It's been pre-admitted, Your Honor.
But a letter from counsel is not evidence of anything.
Has it been pre-admitted? What exhibit number was that again?
It's Exhibit 34, Your Honor.
Plaintiffs?
Yes, Your Honor, PX 34.
It's been admitted. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I'm going to show you this exhibit. Now, you remember Four Corners made a demand on your counsel of record to be paid the difference that had yet to be paid in a connection with this agreement. Do you remember that?
Objection.
Yes.
Form assumes facts not in evidence.
I'm asking if he remembers, Your Honor.
Overruled.
And so I want to talk about this specific letter from which which was the response to our demand letters. And you'll see in the letter, it talks specifically about Four Corners. And I want to turn to that page. And you were asked these questions during your deposition, and I just want to confirm for the court what your testimony was. You testified that you agreed with this statement by your counsel that the owner and also agreed that Four Corners Development LLC, an entity owned and controlled by owner, would provide the specialty and miscellaneous furnishings for the project. Do you see that?
Yes,
And you said during your deposition testimony that you agreed with that, correct?
that's right.
And then it also says that, that also would bill the owner for same, and upon receipt of such payment from the owner, transfer the money to Four Corners for its use performing that scope. Do you remember that as well?
That's right.
Now, in that same deposition last week, we discussed the fact that you allowed or agreed that the owner could hold back money to pay directly to Four Corners, so it wouldn't have to come directly to Allsol before it went to Four Corners. Do you remember that testimony?
Yeah, but did he amend the contract?
Mr. Alam, I'm not asking about whether there was an amendment to the contract. I'm asking whether you agreed to allow Four Corners to be paid directly from the owner. Did you allow that to happen?
Or which paragraph you're reading? Can you read it?
I'm sorry, this isn't about the paragraph anymore. I'm going to take that away for a moment so you're not confused. I'm asking, during your deposition testimony last week, you were asked this question. Were you aware? Let's start with this. Were you aware that the owner was holding back money to pay Four Corners directly?
The thing is, you get confused on that one, because for me, I was considering Tian Koi as the owner of the Four Corner Construction. That's what all the documents so far in the entire project was addressed, that Mr. Tian Koi is the one who is owned the Four Corner Construction. The rest of the entity was never been, because the owner is the Four Corner and the owner is for Highland. So there was holding by the same people on the both amount.
Okay,
Because
so
in my the letter, and we don't have any documentation from them stating, they may be signers as the authority, but there was no a letter send it to us or any person that apart from Tian Koi, anybody else owe Four Corner Development LLC. My whole correspondence on this project was between me and Tian Koi for Four Corner Construction.
Okay, so regardless of what you understood to be the case, you knew though that when payments were coming from the bank to the owner, that the owner, however you saw the owner, you understood the owner was holding back money to pay the furnishings budget, correct?
If you consider the owner as a subcontractor for the furnishing items, then by construction rule and law, that general contractor has to be provided all the backups for the funds they were advancing, getting the advance. That's the reason is that if for any subcontractor I hire, there is a certain rule for hiring a subcontractor. You draft an agreement. Without that, they are not ready to mobilize on the job because they have to sign the contract. Because it's illegal somebody to mobilize on the project unless he have a signed document. And the documents also require a proper insurance, because what happened, the product he's supplying on our job is faulty and have accident because maybe not meet the standard requirement. Then I have to go for that, because if a subcontractor performing a job without having a proper insurance on the project are listed also as additional insurance holder, that they are basically per the law, they are not entitled to enter in the job. But the owner acted like I am the owner, as I am the Four Corner Construction owner. So if their builder risk or their insurance cover both, then for me that's the Mr. Koi who bring me the schedule of values for the services he's going to provide under the Four Corner Construction. And if you ask about the March 19th letter was signed, which was drafted by them. On March 15th, they signed a change order. And that change order was for $751,000. And March 19th, they bring a letter and saying that I want you to increase my subcontract amount from 1.3 million to 1.56. So they give us a range. No, listen, the very.
Mr. Alam, I got to get control. I'm sorry. I don't want to waste the court's time. I need to get these questions, and then you can answer. If you have something to say, your attorney will have the opportunity to ask you questions and you can talk about it. But let me ask my questions, And if you could please just answer my questions, okay? Can you do that for me?
Sir, you need to just answer his questions. You're being extremely non-responsive, and it's not effective. You're not helping yourself by doing that. So listen to his questions, just answer the questions, and then your attorney will ask you questions, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. And so I want to get to this, what you just said, and it was part of what you said that kind of made me think of this. You said that there was this sort of this understanding in your world, in contracting world, that there needs to be some provision of receipts and backup in order to receive payment. You remember saying that just a moment ago?
That's right.
And in this exhibit PX19, which is the agreement between you and Four Corners for providing the payment, where in this agreement is that requirement that you have to provide invoices or backup in order to be paid?
My answer for this question is, when the project was started in October, why it takes 1 year, 8 months to draft this agreement? Because they've been withdrawing the money before with certain schedule of values. This letter was drafted 16 months after the project was already in action, and with the completion time of 289 days for the signed agreement. So what about if the project was over in 289 days? Then why this contract has come to, because you say that project was started in October 2016. And then from October 2016 till March 18, there was 11 pay application has been approved, signed, paid, and they draw the money against what the schedule value they provide.
All right, Mr. Lam, I'm sorry, I got to interrupt you again, and I apologize, and I'm not trying to be rude. I hope you understand that. I'm just trying to get my record, right? And if I understand you have things to say, but you'll have a chance to say that with Mr. Gasworth. My question was, again, does this agreement say anything about Four Corners having to provide receipts or invoices or any other kind of backup documentation in order to be paid on this project?
It's not on this one because
Okay,
if you
so
see the
the answer is no, it's not in this contract, correct?
No, because if you look the second paragraph, you use the word funding from the bank, and the bank raised the issue that where is the backup from the Four Corner construction?
But there's no. Okay, again, I'm asking though, is there any obligation for Four Corners to provide that backup and documentation to Allsol Construction, and where in this agreement is that? If you believe there is, where in this agreement is that?
Yeah, because if you look on the first paragraph, if you read, I, Parvez Alam, Allsol Construction promised to guaranteed sum of 1.3 million up to 1.546 to Four Corner Development LLC for consulting, work, and goods and services. So what do you mean about the goods and services? Is the services means they are performing something on this project. I can see the consulting is different. You may be consultant, maybe for the entire project, but goods and services, you have to provide the backup. Because what do you mean about the goods and what do you mean about the services? You
agree though, Mr. Lam, again, I need to take control. You understand, Your Honor, you understand, Mr. Alam, that you actually had that you actually made payments to Four Corners Development LLC without asking for any backup.
We did ask a backup.
Mr. Alam, didn't you cut checks to? So let's start here. Today, sitting here today, do you believe that you've received backup from Four Corners?
No, sir.
No, sir. Okay. But you also agree that you made payments to Four Corners, correct?
Payments for the advance payment, which they asked to buy the equipment and order the equipment. That's a standard procedure in the
So it is. So you did make payments without getting the backup, correct?
No, we made the payment with the backup.
So you're saying that every time you made a payment to Four Corners that you received backup receipts or invoices from Four Corners?
Not the receipt, but their draw amount, request amount.
Go ahead.
Normally in the industry, like when you put your first pay application, then bank pay us if you're asking for some item has a leak, like currently lumber is like 40% up. A lot of banks are giving the advance payment if you're logging the lumber. That time they requested around 500 some thousand, less retainage around 498, says they want to order the materials because they have a lead time on some of the equipment 6 weeks or 12 weeks. In March 2017, where they got the $498,000 as the advance payment to order the equipments and all, they have to be provided before they get the second draw request, which is 166. They have to provide the backup for the full money they spend on the project before they can get, because sometimes it's take a time to order the equipment, sign the contract, give them advance payment. They have enough time because last draw they took it May 2nd or 9, 2018. So when you ask them to, when you're advancing the money, nobody knows that if the bank approved them to give the $498,000, it's between the bank and them, because owner is the four corner is the owner of the building and four corner is the owner of the four corner construction. I don't know what he talks to the bank. If the bank find him to without any proper backup, but the bank sent them so many letters. And that's what you can see in the next one when we go, because they was asking, where is this money you guys took? You don't have a backup for that. So the goods and services, what you're referring it, that is related to those items I'm talking about. And that's I'm not asking anything different than what industry required. Because sometimes if the four corner go out of business or get bankrupt, you think that where is the $498,000 goes? Is the bank is taking a risk of that amount? Who is responsible? Also construction. If any subcontractor have filed bankruptcy after taking the money, who's going to catch it? They'll come after me. And if I'm asking them to give me the proof where you spend the money, then what is wrong with that? I'm not there. The words you are using in that language is a consultancy, then the goods and then services. The services is a part of your schedule of values. Goods is a part of your schedule of values. If those evidence has not been bring it to the table, then the bank raised a big question to me. And Mr. Koi was sending me a letter, the bank asking for backup, which he has to provide to me, which you can see I can produce in the other. Right now, I personally think that fund they took, they have not provided the service for the amount they took from this project. They are trying to create. And if they are right that what they have spent, they should submit to the bank. I don't need it. If I have a $1.496 million, we are not sitting here. If I have evidence, I can go to the bank. I say, you only give me 1.3 million. Now four corners are doing extra performance work. They need additional $196,000. Bank will say, oh, bring me the backup. If they really run out of money, I can support them.
Mr. Long,
you are telling us, sorry.
I have to object to all of that as non-responsive, Your Honor.
Sustained.
So okay, let me just move on to something else, because I don't know that you're going to answer my question on whether or not the document requires that. So we'll let the document speak for itself. But let me talk about your communications with Four Corners Development. You never, I have not seen an email, but are you aware of any email in which you sent to Four Corners Development requesting backup or receipts or invoices in order to be paid?
Have they sent us any email to us that who is the Four Corner representative apart from Tian Koi? Do you have any document showing?
You're not answering my question now.
Yeah, sir, I really try to be patient here. This isn't an argument between you and the attorney. You need to answer his questions. And so if he asks you a question and your attorney doesn't object, you need to answer the question unless you're going to take the Fifth Amendment or something like that. And so you need to answer the questions, and you're not doing that. You're just arguing with them and bringing up other stuff. And I'm really trying to be patient here, but we're not going to ever finish this trial if you keep doing that.
Your Honor, can I request a 10-minute recess, and I believe I can assist.
How much more do you have, Mr. Martinez?
Not much, maybe 5 minutes.
Okay.
With this
Let's just finish this.
Yeah. And so I want to talk about the communications real quick. So I'm going to share my screen real fast. We're going to blow through these. So this is PX 28. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
And in September of 2018, you sent Mr. Coy, who you believe to be representing both the owner and Four Corners. Is that right?
That's right.
And you sent Mr. Coy an email in September of 2018, and you said, as per our meeting, I would like to confirm to you that I will do my best to get you up to 1.3 million upon receiving final retainage from the bank. Did I read that correctly?
That's right, sir.
Okay. Did you say anywhere in this email that you needed backup receipts, invoices in order to receive the $1.3 million? And I'm asking about this email. Read this email.
No, sir.
It's not in there. Correct. All right. So let's look at, let me stop share. And this is another exhibit that's been shown to previous witnesses, so you may have already seen it. This is exhibit PX32, which has been pre-admitted. This is an email from you, Mr. Alam, again to Mr. Coy, who you understood based on your testimony today, represented both Four Corners and the owner, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it's dated, what date is that? Can you read that at the top?
March 21, 2019.
And it says there's an attached record, and these are all the payments that were made to Four Corners, 498, 551. These are payments that were made directly from Allsol to Four Corners, correct?
That's right.
And then you indicate what the bank has paid to TN, what TN has paid to Allsol, and the difference, which you're indicating was kept by the owner in order to pay Four Corners for the furnishings, correct?
That's right.
And then so you put the whole total together, and then you add a new payment that same day of $250,000. Do you see that?
That's right.
And then the total is $1,047,50. Do you see that?
That's right, sir.
Is there any email that was, oh, no, well, actually, there is no email that was sent around this time in which you said, in order to get $1,047,050.70, you have to provide receipts and backup. Is there?
No, sir.
No, sir. And in fact, there's not an email where you say that I'm only going to pay $1,047,050.70, correct?
On this one, no.
Okay. And so in terms of the payment, you agree that as late as March of 2019, you were on your way to paying Four Corners for the furnishings at least $1 million and maybe more, correct?
That's right.
All right. I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
All right. Go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Alam, I'd like to go and look at this document again, plaintiffs 19, the agreement. Did you sign this in your personal capacity, sir? Let me ask it this way. How did you sign this document?
As a corporate owner, like a company owner, also construction.
And do you identify yourself here in the first line as Parway's Alam of Allsol Construction?
That's right.
And does your signature block represent your current title?
That's right.
Did you have any intent to bind yourself individually to the obligations contained in this document?
I didn't get it, that portion.
I'm sorry, I
Did you
couldn't
have-
hear you.
No, not personally, yes.
Yeah, not personally, yes, thank you. So I'd like to show you a document, and this is COA 1265 through COA 1271. And it's an email from Mr. Coy to yourself, forwarding an email from Darren Durrett of the BB&T Bank.
That's right.
Can you explain what this, do you know why Mr. Coy sent this email to you?
To make a proof for what are the funds he received from the bank for the construction, as well as his personal, like for other expenses related to his land and soft cost.
Okay, so, and this has to do with how the loan has been funded with the change orders, correct?
That's right.
And what did Mr. Coy explain to you regarding these email from BB&T?
Your Honor, objection relevance. I'm not entirely sure how any of this is relevant to the agreement between Four Corners and Allsol.
I'll get it there.
Okay, yeah, I'm not following it either, but go ahead.
Now, Mr. Alam, was it your understanding, did Mr. Coy ever tell you that he was required to put additional equity into the agreement with his bank?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is that reflected here in this email that he forwarded it to you?
That's right.
And at some point, and I'd like to show you this email. This is COI 1263 and 1264. Can you explain why there is a non-cashed check from Highland Senior Living Arlington to Allsall Construction in the amount of $107,577 with the notation draw app number 11 difference?
Your Honor, objection to relevance. Also, I don't think this is an exhibit that had been previously slated to be admitted in this case. So I would object on unfair surprise.
What exhibit is this? What exhibit number?
It's a document that was produced by the plaintiff, Your Honor. It's not an exhibit.
Your Honor, my objection, the objection is that they had an obligation to designate what exhibits for trial they were going to introduce. They didn't do, well, they designated hundreds of them. This is not among the hundreds of exhibits they designated. And again, I failed to see the relevance of any checks from an unrelated entity on this project.
It's not unrelated. It's part of the damages you're seeking in this lawsuit.
So what exhibit number? This doesn't have an exhibit number either?
No, sir, not yet.
And this was produced in discovery by them, but then you didn't list it on your exhibit list. Okay. Is this like a rebuttal exhibit?
Yes, sir, but it's not earth-shattering. I can move on without even going there.
Okay.
Did Mr. Coe tell you that he did not put in the equity required by the bank?
Yes, sir.
Objection, relevance, Your Honor. I'm failing.
I'm going to get there right now.
Go ahead.
$61. Nope. Sorry, 111. Okay. Did you get an email from Mr. Durrett with BB&T asking for backup for the miscellaneous furnishings items?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and why did you get that email?
Because the amount has been drawn from the furnishing items by Four Corner Construction.
Okay, and in regard to the Four Corner Constructions, you heard the testimony from Mr. Lee that the items that Four Corners was supposed to perform were listed on the continuation sheet on 57 through 77, correct?
That's right, sir.
Which of these items did you perform?
I did the courtyard work. I did the additional landscaping. And if you go up, I did the water feature. This in the courtyard. If you go down a little bit, can you go up? Part of the signage, I did it. And I did the part of the kitchen equipment. And I did the water feature as I told it to you. And those are the items I did, yes.
And in fact, you have backup, do you not, for those items completed, do you not?
Yeah, I provided the backup to a bank that's included in my $6,351,000. Which bank have all the backups? Grant Levy and bank both have the backups for those items.
Okay. And Four Corners did not perform those items, did they?
That's right.
Sir, did you ever have, pursuant to, and I'm sorry, let me go back to the share, pursuant to this agreement, we'll use the plaintiff's 19. Did you ever have occasion to have any oh, I didn't hit the button. How's that? At the bottom of this contract upon which they sue upon, there's a statement that says, for any amount that is less than 1496, also will need to provide substantiated evidence as to justify the payment shortfall, which needs to be agreed and accepted by Four Corners. Do you see that, sir?
That's right, sir.
Did you ever have occasion to meet with Mr. Coy about these issues?
Yes, sir.
And what can you explain what your substantiated reasons were for the inability to have an amount of less than 1.496?
Because the changes on the project was going back and forth because Mr. Tian was requesting for the items which they don't want to ask additional fund to the bank apart from the what approved under the change order number 1. So if you look on the pay application number 12, if you look on the total contract amount, $6.8 million, which was being signed as a contract, with have $1.3 million of the furnishing. There was a $74,000, the TXU bill was paid. If you look in my contract, was signed and sent it to bank, that's excluded in my contract because power company and gas company charges were excluded with the signed contract, he signed it. And even that 74,000 was not the enough fund for the service which was bringing it to the project because the TXU agreed to bring to the transformer and to the tap can. Later, the manager was changed and they only bring to the transformer, from the transformer to the tap can. I spent on each building around $8,000 or $9,000 to get the power in the project. The second one, you see the change orders. Those are the miscellaneous change order, which listed with a detailed breakdown provided to the bank, which was signed by Mr. Coy on March 15th. My change order was submitted to bank on January 28th because
let me just interrupt you a little bit, sir, and take it back. So we're looking at the bank. This is an email from Mr. Darren Durrett of the bank with a summary of the loan distributions as of this date on January 3rd of 2019 at the end of the project, correct, sir?
That's right.
And can you explain what this breakdown means for the contract and what this means and what Mr. Coe told you about this email, which he forwarded to you?
He said, these are the funds I received from the bank. And funding for the inspection was $6,666,000, and the BB&T funding actual was this much. So there was short of some $1,600 some dollar. But these are the record of the bank release fund to the owner, which is Mr. Tian Coy.
Okay, and the bank inspector, what was the procedure for the bank to inspect? Did he issue reports?
That's right, sir.
So let me show you one of those reports. There it is. Is this one of the reports, which is defendants 115?
That's right.
And is this the report for payout number 12?
That's right, sir.
Okay. And what did Mr. Libby require regarding the payments owed to subcontractors in his reporting?
Backups.
Objection, relevance, Your Honor.
So let's
Is this relevant to this loan or why are we going into this?
Yes, this is this loan for this project, sir.
Okay, go ahead. Go rule.
This is a report for payout 12 for the Highland Senior Village project, correct, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and in this, Mr. Libby goes through all of his backup regarding what he has personally inspected, less previously fundings and things of that nature, right?
That's right, sir.
And change orders that we just looked at in the summary sheet?
That's right, sir.
Okay. And in here, it says, it is our understanding that the contractor or borrower is reallocating funds as subcontracts are executed and to maintain a properly allocated schedule of values.
That's right, sir.
It also says that our review of the reallocations revealed that the contractor is not front-end loading.
That's right, sir.
And attached to this is a schedule of values.
Which is done for the bank reporting to
Which is
verify.
correct.
We verifying all the backups.
Correct.
It is yeah.
And this is what you had to comply with through your pay application process with the owner, correct?
That's right, sir.
Okay. And here we see in the bank report for pay app 12, the miscellaneous furnishing item has been reduced to $953,000. Do we not?
Objection, Your Honor.
That's
Again,
right.
this is violating the rule. He's just trying a backdoor way of trying to suggest that there was a modification to this agreement. Four Corners is not a party to any of this. And I would also object on the basis of hearsay, Your Honor, because now it's being offered for the truth of the matter asserted instead of just being offered as notice for what was received. And further object, Your Honor, that this was not, I mean, again, this has already been addressed by your ruling in terms of excluding any evidence of affirmative defenses that have been unpled and waived.
Goes to performance, Your Honor.
It does not, Your Honor. I'd love to hear the articulation for how this goes to performance.
Does this go to performance?
How does it go to performance? Because he just testified, Mr. Lee testified that they did not perform those 1 through 77 or those 53 to 77 items. And he further testified that it wasn't reduced from 1.3 to 953 under redirect from Mr. Martinez.
No, no, there was no discussion as to substantiated evidence of a reduction from 1496. That was the testimony of Mr. Lee, Your Honor. It was not this 953 number that they're hoping to now backdoor in, even though they did not plead an affirmative defense of modification, novation, accord and satisfaction, or payment in this case. In addition, the fact that the CDC report, which is submitted to the owner and not to the subcontractor, Four Corners Development, has no relevance or bearing. It's not material, Your Honor, to the agreement at issue between these two parties in this lawsuit.
I'm going to overrule the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Move that defendants 115 be admitted.
I stand on my objections, Your Honor.
This is 115, you said?
Yes, sir.
115 is admitted.
Now, Mr. Alam, going back to the agreement upon which Four Corners sues upon, that for any amount that is less than 1496 also will need to provide substantiated evidences to justify the payment shortfall. Did you have a discussion with Mr. Coy about why that occurred?
That's right, sir.
Okay, could you explain the substance of that conversation and the reasons why you provided to Mr. Coy on behalf of Four Corners Development as to why it had to be less? Just like that email that we saw where you said you would do your best to get him 1-1.
Your Honor, I'll object again. I have to make my record because we're not going to try this by consent. They did not plead affirmative defense of modification or accord and satisfaction. And we object to any testimony offered as to a modification or reduction of this.
This is within the four corners of the document. This is within the four corners of the contract upon which they sue upon.
No, to the extent that you're trying to argue that this is a modification.
No, it's a.
Let me finish my ruling, please.
Oh, sorry.
To the extent that you're trying to argue that this is a modification, the objection is sustained, and to the extent it goes to the issue of full performance, I'll allow it.
Thank you. Mr. Alam, what were the reasons why there were cost overruns on the project?
Because if you look on they have the progress picture on this project, that the entire building is is an enclosed building. If you look on the report of the Grant Levy, the whole structure of the building was done, and then they come back and want to lower the whole ground 2 feet. So what, and where you cannot take any equipment inside the courtyard area there, because, and then they come back and they have certain, if you look on the contract document, they have no, if you see the schedule of, for the floor finishes, they say to be determined, because at the time the contract was signed, there was no define of those finish out items. They said they define later. So they gave me a budget number to put it, the architect, I put 167,000. But when they picked the flooring items and some additional item which was not on the drawing, then I have to spend additional, because that costed me 230,000 or around 240, which I gave the backup to bank. Because
Well, let me just briefly stop you there. Did you keep a record of all costs and expenses that you incurred in this project?
that's right, sir.
Okay. Can you explain to me, we're looking at Defendant's Exhibit 125. Can you tell me what Defendant's Exhibit 125 represents?
This is our summary report of the expenses for the vendors, subcontractors, and the material supplier, equipment rental company. And those are the, and our site superintendent who is running the project, or project manager, with their paychecks, their report, weekly paychecks amount, and all the details are there, how much they're drawing on each week from the project to supervise the
And in
job.
fact, Four Corners is listed on this document, is it not?
That's right. The four corner is there, yes. A part of the expense there, yes.
And it's right there.
That's right.
And how much money did you expend in the construction of the project?
We expend over 672,000 with full backup.
Don't you mean millions, sir?
Yes, I'm saying $672,000 based on the record you are showing. Then
No. What I was asking is, what did you spend on the entirety of the project through all your vendors?
$6,351,000 some dollars there. Yeah,
And if I go to the bottom of this, it should, yeah, here we go. So that's the total cost and expenses.
that's right.
Okay, and how much were you paid?
$6,351,000. Because 498 was the Four Corners in that amount.
Plus the amounts that were withheld by the owner from your payments that were due to you.
That's right.
No more questions.
Your Honor, I wasn't sure if Mr. Gasworth was admitting that exhibit that you just covered because it has not been pre-admitted.
I don't need to.
Okay.
So you did not admit that exhibit, but you did admit, no, you never admitted exhibit 125, correct?
No, I did. You accepted 125. Oh, I didn't admit 125. I need to admit 125. I'm sorry.
So yeah, that I just wanted to make sure I got my objection in. I guess I'll let him do his thing and then I'll do my thing.
Actually, I don't need to admit 125 for the purpose of proving what I need to prove. Mr. Alam, is your recollection of the amounts paid based upon your personal knowledge?
Yes,
And is your amounts as to the amounts that you expended based upon your personal knowledge?
yes.
Thank you. No more questions.
Thank you. Mr. Alam, may I redirect, Your Honor?
Right.
So Mr. Alam, you were just testifying a little bit ago about the owner holding back payments for Four Corners. You remember during our direct, we talked a little bit about that. Is it your testimony now that in fact you did allow the owner to hold back payments to pay Four Corners?
No, sir.
You did not allow that to happen, correct?
That's
All right. And you remember sitting for a deposition in August of 2020, don't you?
yes,
In fact, that deposition is related to an arbitration dispute that you're currently in with the owner, HVSL, correct?
that's right.
And I'm using HVSL as short for Highlands Village Senior Living. You understand that?
That's
correct?
right.
And in that deposition, you were asked the question of whether you agreed that you would pay Four Corners to handle the furnishings for the project. And you remember answering that question correct. And you said, yes, sir. Do you remember that?
furnishing it for the items they have shown in the schedule of values. Yes.
Let me pull up the deposition testimony from that arbitration.
That's
So
right.
the question on line 20 of page 170 of that deposition. Now you remember being sworn under oath to tell the
That's
truth in that deposition, correct?
That's right.
And the question was, and you agreed that you would pay Four Corners to handle the furnishings for this project, correct? And your
That's
answer
right.
was, yes, sir. Is that right?
Yes, yes, sir.
And then the follow-up question was, but not every payment that you made to Four Corners was done in this way. A check from you also to Four Corners. Is that right?
That's
And
right.
then your answer was, that's right. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then then a follow-up question to that was, in fact, there were some payments that were made where the owner just retained the money from the draws to go to Four Corners, basically earmarked that for Four Corners, correct? And you said,
right.
that's right, sir.
Yes.
Did I read that correctly?
Yeah.
And I also asked, and you knew that the owner and owner's affiliate Four Corners were going to be handling the furnishings items, correct? And you said, yes, sir.
That's right.
Okay, so your testimony today is that you agree that you indeed knew that the owner was holding back payment to pay Four Corners and that you consented to that, correct?
Or if you look, then if the owner is holding the money for the Four Corners, then why they take a check from us for $498? Because they.
Mr. Alam, my question is, do you dispute your testimony or do you agree with your testimony today, the testimony you offered in August of 2020?
I agree with my testimony.
Okay, thank you. So I want to talk about Exhibit 125 now, the defendant's Exhibit 125, which wasn't admitted into evidence, but you were asked a bunch of questions about it. So I want to talk about that if we can.
Right.
So let me pull up defendant's Exhibit 125 so we can talk about it. Give me one moment. I don't have the defendant's exhibits queued up as well as I do the plaintiff's exhibits. So here we go. I'm going to share the screen. And this purports to be, I think, what you told your attorney just now, that it purports to be a summary of all of the costs that Allsall Construction incurred on this particular job. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, let me pull up my questions real quick because I want to make sure I'm in the right spot. And you were involved in preparing this document, right?
No, my CP, the account lady.
Your account lady?
Yes.
But this is a document that was prepared by Allsall Construction?
Yeah, this is Allsall Construction, you can say. But this is prepared by my accountant who work in my office. Yeah.
Thank you. So if we go through this document, for example, Exhibit 125, which again has not been admitted, but was used as a demonstrative just a moment ago, it's your testimony, at least, that you are familiar generally with each of the line items in this document, correct?
That's right.
And each of the line items that are contained in this document were items that were paid for relating to this project, correct?
That's right.
I presume you used receipts or other types of backup documentation to to get this data together?
That's right.
You used invoices from subcontractors?
That's right.
Lien releases from subcontractors?
That's right.
And the receipts you used to prepare this report, you are 100% certain that they were all used for this project, the Mansfield Senior Living and Memory Care Facility, correct?
Yes.
And so the answer is yes, you're 100% sure that's the case. And to be clear, did you review all of the documents yourself, or did somebody at Allsall review them?
No, my account lady, she just write me a weekly report for the expenses and the collections, like receiving the fund and distributing the fund. She only gave me project cost as of today, like every Monday. And that's what I check it where the amounts are plus or minus. Those report I can see. The detailed report is transferred. These reports go to our CPA which is Brett Lawrence in the QuickBook. And by monthly or every 2 months, I pay him to make sure that go through it. If there anybody's W-2, 1099 or EIN or some numbers are missing, can send them a letter. Yes.
Okay, so I want to ask you this question then. Do you stand by the accuracy of this document?
I'm very positive, yes.
And you believe this to be as accurate, an accurate accounting of the project costs on this job?
That's right.
And you believe this document to be as accurate as your testimony in this case today?
That's right, because this report come from the QuickBook. This report, as if you see, there is a QuickBook report, because this is summarized by vendor in a separate form. But QuickBook is already, once you write the check, it's our expense is already there in the QuickBook. Only this one is created for like Home Depot invoices. We buy the material from Home Depot.
Okay, so let me go on. So just to be clear, for example, let's use an example in this document. There is a line item for AHSC. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a date for it, August 4th, 2017. It looks like there's a check number next to that, and it says $300. Do you see that?
Yes.
There's also an April 6th, 2018 entry for another $300, correct?
That's right.
And it's your testimony that this $300 was spent on the Mansfield Senior Living and Memory Care Facility, correct?
That's right.
All right. And do you remember you produced backup documents in the arbitration? And in this case, you produced backup documents that had all of the receipts. You remember that?
Yes.
Remember, it was like 2 bankers boxes, and your attorney and I tried to get together and get all this copied and ready to go, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to show you some of the backup that you actually provided in connection with this particular line item, AHSC. So let me pull that up.
This is being so long.
All right.
Being so long.
Do you see the check number in front of you? This is the backup for that particular line entry. I can go back and forth between this, but you'll see AHSC 111193 and the defendant's exhibit 125 that you provided. Do you see that?
That's right.
And you'll see at the top, that's 11193. Do you see that?
That's right.
And you said $300. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
And then if you scroll down, can you tell me what the address is for the Mansfield facility?
120 Regency Parkway.
You realize that there is a dermatology clinic at 130 Regency Parkway, correct?
Because
you know that, right? You're the general contractor on that.
Yeah, 130. Right? Yes, 130. Yes.
Right. And this invoice, what's the address that the work was performed for?
130 Regency Parkway.
Which is the Mansfield Dermatology Clinic, correct?
That's right.
Right. I want to go back to 125 and talk about another example. Do you remember Beltstar being a subcontractor on the contract, right?
That's right.
And Beltstar was actually also a subcontractor on the dermatology clinic, correct?
That's right.
So I want to show you the backup for Beltstar. And you see there, it says check 10811. Do you see that?
Yes.
And if I go back to the Beltstar entries, you actually don't have a check number in your project costs for this, but I'll represent to you the date is December 20th, 2017, and this is December 21st, 2017, but the amounts 55,500, negative 5,550, negative 26,500. You see that those are all the same costs that you put into the Mansfield project?
Which one you're talking about? Because
right there.
Yeah, those one, if the one you have a question on that, we can check with our account lady and answer you on that. But
I'm asking you now because today you've testified that you believe this project cost document, the defendant's exhibit 125, is just as accurate as the testimony that you've given today before this court.
Yes,
and
sir,
so I'm looking at the Beltstar backup that you provided to us, and I want you to tell me, what is the lien release for? What project is that for Beltstar for the check number that's referenced there?
That's United Dermatology.
All right, so I want to ask you a couple more.
Mhm.
Let's look at, let's find a big one. How about Nevillstone? Are you familiar with the Nevillstone invoices?
Yes, yes,
And you remember in Defendant's Exhibit 125, if we scroll down to the ends, sorry, there are a lot. Nevillstone, do you see that? 8/16/2017, $7,034.09. You
yes,
see
sir.
that, Mr. Alam?
Yes,
And
sir.
again, it was your testimony that every cost in here is related to the Mansell project, correct?
That's right.
And here there's the same number, $7,034.09. Do you see that?
That's right.
And then it says here that it is shipping to, and again, the total here for the invoice from Nevillstone is $7,034.09. Do you see that?
That's right, sir.
And who is it listed to being shipped to?
United Dermatology.
I'll represent to you, Mr. Alam, that I've gone through with a fine-tooth comb and identified payments to AHSC, Beltstar, D. Martinez Surveying, DNC, Feral Gas, Foxworth Galbraith, Home Depot, J&J Plumbing, Nevillstone Plumbing Plus, and Ready Cable, all of which appear on your project cost document, Exhibit DX 125, that you're representing today to the court were for costs incurred on this project, which were actually for the dermatology project.
No,
Do you have any reason to disagree that that's the case?
That's right, sir. I do.
No, you disagree. So you disagree that each of the lien waivers, each of the receipts for those payments says United Dermatology?
Yeah, because the subcontractors are working on the both job, they get confused on their invoices. Because if that is a question, you need to call the vendors and check whether this amount been paid for what project. Because in their record, if they enter both projects were next to each other, is you talk about AHSC who come and do the pre-inspection for the handicap requirement, and we not fail a single item on the handicap because we use the consultant.
Yeah. Okay. I want to talk about that. Let me talk about that because you just said you didn't fail on AHSC, right? So
Yes.
There's no reason for you to have two invoices for AHSC on this one project because you didn't fail. You have an invoice for the dermatology clinic and you have an invoice for this project. Did you ever inform the project owner that you were billing on this project for work
Objection,
related
relevance.
to another project?
Yeah, how is this relevant to this case?
The
Well,
case
this is,
is,
Your Honor, he just testified that his testimony is just as accurate as the project cost document that Mr. Gasworth just directed him on or redirected him on. And so I'm just
no
trying to show the
relevance.
court that Mr. Alam is not being honest as it relates to the project costs for this project.
For this project, based on looking at some other project where there may have been a double invoice?
No, Your Honor, his testimony is that all of these documents that are listed here and all of the backup was for costs incurred on this project, when in fact they are listed for another project, not this project.
but Your Honor, the project, I have signed two contracts. Mr. Tian signed the contract for the dermatology as well as signed the contract for the senior living because he is the owner on the both project. Because the contract has been signed on the both project by the same person. And the problem when you're seeing these expenses there, the subcontractors who supplying the services, they get sometimes confused that what address, because if they're supplying on the first project, which is started earlier, because this is on the same owner, is going the both project. So it's not like I'm furnishing a different owner, the service, what we use in our record in the contract, those vendors were maybe confused writing the address on the job, but the material which you see is those material has been 100% used on this project. We have not been missing the project from here to there. The total cost of the project, one is on our own dermatology and the one on our own the senior living. and they have two contracts, separate contracts.
Your Honor, I can move on. I think the point is made. And the documents speak for themselves. So I want to talk about the this 953. You're saying that the bank provided this consulting report that indicates the miscellaneous furnishings budget is 953. Do you remember that testimony with Mr. Gasworth?
That's right, sir.
And approximately when were those documents sent? Was it about September 2018?
It's around that much, yes.
Around that time, right? Do you remember in September 2018 sending an email to Mr. Coy saying that you're going to do your best to get him $1.1 million or 1.3 million and no event less than 1.1 million?
Objection asked and answered.
I mean, you have covered this. Are you going to go to a new topic, or you just?
I am. I'm just going to confirm that if it
He's
was
already
nine,
testified to that, and I've seen the document. So let's go to the next question.
fine, Your Honor. So the 153 number that you're testifying to, there would be no.
953.
I mean the 953. You agree there would be no reason for you to tell the owner that you're going to pay over $1 million in furnishings if you were only obligated to pay $953,000. Is that
Because
correct?
owner sent me the backup for 953.
That wasn't my
Owner-
question. Mr. Alam, is it true, yes or no? You did tell the owner you would pay over $1 million after those CDC consultings, after September of 2018, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I pass the witness, Your Honor.
No more questions.
Call your next witness.
I presume we have an agreement on the record that we're going to bifurcate attorney's fees. Is that correct, Mr. Gasworth?
Yes.
Okay, so we will submit that, I guess, by paper, Your Honor. I don't know how you want to do that.
Let's just figure it out after closing.
Sounds good, Your Honor. We don't have any other additional witnesses on our side, so we rest.
Mr.
Yeah.
Gasworth, call your first witness.
I move for directed verdict, Your Honor.
Denied. Call your first witness.
Defense rests.
Okay, so how do you guys want to do this? I do have some questions before we do closing, because I want to make sure I'm kind of understanding everything here, and I don't have the exhibits with me, which makes this a little more difficult. I may need to get those emailed to me. But can you pull up the contract again?
Yes, Your Honor. That is 19. It's attached to this email, Your Honor.
Okay. Can you blow it up, please, so I can?
Yes, Your Honor.
Perfect. Okay. So I want to make sure I fully understand kind of that this is a very unusual setup, the way this works. So first off, I don't believe this is a guarantee. This is what you are relying on to try to get Mr. Alam individually. This was the guarantee. There's not another guarantee that.
Correct,
Yeah.
Your Honor. It's based on the language I parways Alam.
Yeah, I don't believe that this is a guarantee, that this would qualify as a guarantee. So to that extent, I don't believe there's a guarantee in this case. So this said basically he would agree to pay 1.3 to 1.563 for the consultation work, goods, and services. And then this is where I get a little bit confused kind of on how this was supposed to work, or how it actually did work. It says that the full balance will be paid from all salt to Four Corners within 14 days when the funding bank BB&T releases the final retainage related to the construction of Highlands. That has occurred, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And then there was this 1.496 that they'll pay at least 1.496 million unless there was substantiated evidence as to justify the payment shortfall, which needs to be agreed and accepted to by Four Corners. I didn't see that ever happened.
That's correct, Your Honor, at least from our position.
Did Four Corners ever agree and accept that there would be a payment shortfall?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Gasworth?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. Do you guys want to do your closings today or tomorrow morning?
If I have the option, I'd love to do it tomorrow morning.
Same, Your Honor.
Okay. So let me kind of tell you where I'd like you to focus your closings. One of the nice things I think about having a judge as opposed to a jury is you get a little bit of feedback. I don't, unless you have some case law on point that says this language would justify as a guarantee. And let me just say that if you have case law on point that's binding to me, I will follow it. I don't believe, based on my understanding of the law and guarantee, that contract would qualify as a guarantee. But again, if you want to bring something up during your closings to the contrary that says, hey, judge, there's a case out of the Dallas Court of Appeals that says, that's right on point. I don't want you to, don't hide case law from me. In other words, if you have something. So, but that's just kind of my, I've handled a lot of cases involving guarantees. I just don't think that qualifies. But, I've been wrong before, and I'd like to know the law if there is anything on that. There was a lot of, I guess I am a little confused about, there was all these things that Mr. Gasworth brought up about payments made to the owners and the management company. I'm not sure what the relevance of that is, but it does seem a little questionable to me. So anyway, I guess that's kind of where I am on this. It does seem with kind of this contract is such an unusual contract based on the exact language of the contract. It does seem like this should be a plaintiff's verdict. And so, but have you guys tried to settle this at all?
We have, Your Honor.
Okay.
Your Honor, I'd like to very much brief performance and damages under a breach of contract theory, which I think is highly, highly relevant to this case.
Yeah, performance and damages is probably is an issue. I guess the question I have though is that I didn't see any evidence that I know that he said he didn't fully perform, but how does that come into play in this particular contract where it says that it kind of shifted the burden to the general contractor,
right?
Show that there was some reason to.
I'd like to brief it. It's black letter law on contract recoverability and expectation of damages and for breach, and I will be happy to put that together for you.
And Your Honor, to the extent, and I think the issue here, and Mr. Gasworth can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand it almost seems like a gotcha based on our pleading that we said we performed. I have case law, and in fact, Mr. Minton has been diligently finding case law that says pleading performance allows us to move forward with a full or a substantial performance issue for a jury or for a judge or a fact finder in this case. And it's clear from the evidence that there was substantial performance. If some furniture wasn't moved into a particular location, that shouldn't be a reason why we don't get paid, especially if the contract doesn't provide for it.
Well, I'll disagree that that's what the evidence said, but regardless, the issue is they pled full performance.
That's not true.
Well, they did.
We didn't say full performance, Your Honor. We said perform.
Okay. They did not plead substantial performance and they did not plead excused performance. But regardless, as I will brief for you tomorrow, when there is not full performance, the plaintiff is then required to prove up the reasonable and necessary value of the services that they provided in order to support their award of damages. And there was no evidence today the word reasonable and necessary was never used by the plaintiff in its demonstration of costs.
Your Honor, and if I may, I think you're already on this, Your Honor. It's not required by this agreement. And I think you have to apply the language of the agreement, not some outside requirement that Mr. Gasworth is creating. Now, I will say this, Your Honor, to the extent it is this, I don't think there's an issue that there's substantial performance. And I don't think that there's an issue that there's at least waiver or excuse to perform. So we will respond on the merits of or the substance of what Mr. Gasworth is going to present to the court. But as an alternative, I'm letting you know now, we're going to ask for a trial amendment for just that, to add those two little sentences, substantial performance, or it was excused.
Wow.
which is clear from the evidence that was presented today that it was excused. And there's no unfair surprise because Mr. Gasworth has known this as long as he's been preparing for this case, which has been the last month.
I mean, you're asking me to basically throw out all of his affirmative defenses because he hasn't pled them. Why should I allow you to do the same thing? I mean, it's
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, Your Honor, in
what's
terms
good
of,
for the goose is good for the gander.
yeah, and I get that, Your Honor.
I'm just not sure. Is it required to plead substantial performance? It's not affirmative defense.
Not
Right.
affirmative
What is the
defense.
pleading requirement for that anyway? Those are all things you guys can. I do agree that that's kind of an possibly an issue in this case. Do you guys want to come back at 9:30? What time? I know you're going to have to.
Let me just look real quick for my tomorrow. I've had my email off all day, so it wouldn't beep.
When do you want the briefing, Your Honor, if we are going to provide? Because I don't know when I'm going to get Mr. Gasworth's brief. I'm worried I'm going to get it at 9:30 in the morning and not have a chance to review it.
I'm going to try to work on it to see if I can get it out. Can we have closing tomorrow with briefing by the end of the day?
I want to get the briefing before the closing.
Okay, I'll work hard.
Why don't we? Do you want to just do the closings in the afternoon then, or is that would be better for you?
That would be fantastic.
Let me just make sure. Let me check my calendar real quick. You want to do 1:30, 2 o'clock, something like that?
2 o'clock.
1:30 or either one, Your Honor.
Oh, you want to do 3? I can do 3, but I can't do any later than 3.
Did you say 3? I didn't say 3. Who said 3?
I thought Mr. Martinez said 3.
No. I said either works. Either
Oh,
works.
okay.
1:30
Yeah.
or 2.
Yeah, 1:30 or 2.
Why don't we do 2 o'clock? Get me the briefing by noon.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Maybe that'll allow you to get a little bit of sleep tonight. So.
Can we, do we use this same link for tomorrow, sir?
Yeah.
Okay.
Use the same link for tomorrow. Come back at 2. Tony, come back at 2. And we will go from there. Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And Reagan, if you could stay on, and Tony, if you could stay on.
Thank you for your help, by the way, Ms. Rieger. Appreciate it.
Thanks for everybody's patience with my technological shortcomings.
It's all right. You guys have a good day.
You too.
Thank
Bye.
you, Your Honor. Thank you, sir.
Oh, let's turn this off.